Welcome to Kishore Chess Mentor. And in today's section, we will see the part two of how to attack in chess. In the last session, we have seen the part one of how to attack in chess, and in the last session, we have seen how the e6 is quite exposed, and the bishop gives a tactical blow on e6. So in today's section, the e6 is not quite vulnerable. It doesn't look like vulnerable because the knight on e5 is guarding it, and the knight on e5 is being guarded by the knight on d7 as well. So it looks like everything is secured, and knight is acting as a shield, and it doesn't pave way for the attack on the e6. So this gives me an when I see this position, this takes me back to good old days when I was in college. I used to be a last bencher, and we don't used to study often. So being last benchers, we used to study only at the last moment, and we used to have a very good friend of ours, and he used to teach us the subjects, and we used to go ahead and we used to write the exams and clear it. And our good friend is Chiranjeevi. So I am forever grateful for him because of him I can say that I became an engineer. The reason is he used to teach us, and the good thing about Chiranjeevi is that he has to study and he is teaching us the subject. So that is a nice thing. But for the sake of friendship, what he used to do is that he used to read the arrear subjects as well, even though he doesn't have any arrear during his entire time. So that is the nice thing about Chiranjeevi, and I am thankful for him. And one of the experience what I had during the final semester is that myself and Velmani, we used to go to Chiranjeevi's home. So that is where we used to learn the subjects. So all of a sudden, what happened on one fine day, it was heavily raining, and we were, we were quite wet, and it was full of waters on the roads. So we have to walk, and there is no other way to go because the vehicle was not moving. And so one of the person he looks like he is coming directly from the space. Okay, so everything is being covered. Okay, so even for hands, he used to have gloves to protect himself from getting wet, and nice shoes. Quite a long shoes in order to protect himself, and nice jacket as well as the hoodie. And the only place which he didn't cover or he couldn't cover is the face. So we used to see him and see how protective he is, and we used to walk. And all of a sudden, what happened? There was a bus which passed by, and the water splashed right on his face. Okay, not on his hand or not on his legs or anything. So it directly splashed right on his face, and we couldn't control. We laughed. Okay, so we shouldn't have, but during that age, so that is what we have to do, right? So so we laughed, and we moved on. Okay, so they went to Sanjeev's home for studying. So here, when I see this position, it quite resembles the same thing. Okay, so it is shields everywhere. So the knight on e5 is being protecting the knight on d7 is protecting the e5, and e5 is guarding the e6. So everywhere it looks like it is protecting. Okay, so or it is acting as a shield for the king. Okay, and saying you cannot attack, right? And the water splashed right on the face of e6. So we will see how this one got proceeded. And in yesterday's section, we saw how the bishop on e6. Okay, so it's a direct tactical blow, right? So today we will see some indirect stuff, what white has to do in order to attack the e6. So the same position or the same structure from yesterday is that one thing is quite common, that is the attack is on e6, and the second thing is the king is in the center. So these two are the things that which I wanted to convey, and we are going to take it in the part two. So let's go to the position, and here, so there is no direct attack on e6. So knight on d6 will be proceeded with pawn on d6, and there is no other piece that is eyeing for e6. So straight away rook into d7. So this is one brilliant move. Okay, so here he is quite exposing the king. Knight into d7, and now knight into e6. So splash right on the face, pawn into, queen into. And there are a couple of variations here. So right away, the king is under attack, the bishop can go to e7 or the king can go to d8. So there are two options. So let's first go with bishop e7. And for bishop e7, so rook e1. So he is building the attack slowly, right? So the king is the only piece which is defending the bishop, whereas now we have increased the attack to 2. Okay, so queen on the rook, and the defense is still 1. So there are a couple of options here for black in order to defend the position or defend the bishop. One is the knight b6, and the other one is the queen c5. So you will see one by one. And for bishop e7, rook e1, knight to b6. So now the defense has raised to 2. Okay, so I mean like the queen is defending e7 as well as the king, whereas the attack is still 2. So now what happens is that we will raise the attack to 1, bishop g5. And bishop g5, now the attack is 3 and the defense is 2. So now rook c7, attack is 3 and defense is 3. So now looks like we reached a dead end, right? So I mean like here, bishop to c6. So king to f8, and now what happens is that when you look at the position carefully, you understand that the king is held up in that particular square and the king doesn't have any square to go. So which gives us an idea of giving an attack on the f file. So I mean like all the pieces are doing it their job perfectly. So what happens is that even if rook e3, the idea of rook f3 checkmate. And let's say for example if the bishop takes bishop, okay, then you can pretty much say that the queen can go to e8 and it's a checkmate. Okay, so I mean like the pieces are quite overloaded and it doesn't help right on time, and the king cannot do anything much, and the rook on h8 does nothing literally. So here, so this variation is fine, and okay, let's get back to bishop e3 here. Instead of bishop g5, okay, there is one more called bishop e3. The problem with bishop e3 is that, I mean, bishop e3, so you can say that, okay, I mean, like I am pinning this knight and I am going to win this knight. Okay, so that's a nice thing, but black forgot that, I mean, like white forgot that, so he has already sacrificed the rook on d7. So the first move is the rook on d7, and he has already given exchange. And what black can do right now is that he wanted to save the position as well as like he wanted to castle. So the king is no more vulnerable. So black does queen d7, and if you take the b6, then it's castles. Okay, and now when we look at the position in terms of the material, it looks like black is having, let's say, an exchange up, okay, for some compensation. Okay, so that is the difference between, say, bishop to, say, knight b6, bishop to e3, and bishop to g5. So bishop to g5 is more forcing, and bishop to e3 is not. So black is having his options to save the position. So here, instead of knight b6, there is queen c5. So for queen c5, the best part of queen c5 is that, I mean, it is guarding the bishop on e7. Okay, that is one nice thing. And in addition to that, when you look at this position, okay, so the difference of knight b6 is that the bishop can go to g5, okay, and it attacks the e7 bishop. Whereas when the queen goes to c5, you can pretty much see that it doesn't, it not only supports the bishop on e7, it is also guarding the bishop coming from g5, coming to g5. So now the bishop cannot go to g5 and raise the attack to 3, right? Because the queen can take g5, right? So, and it still guards the bishop on e7 as well. So let's say here, if you play bishop g5, okay, he can take this one, and it is still guarding the queen is still guarding the bishop. Okay, so here, queen to c5, and say here, the best part is that, so having understood that the bishop on g5 is not happening because the queen on c5 is protecting it, let me eliminate the defender by playing b4. And what happens here is that either he have to take the queen into b4, or he has to play some counter attack like knight f8. And for knight f8, the queen can go to, say, g4 and queen to c3. And now let's say, for example, there are a couple of things. Okay, rook into e7, king into e7, bishop here. So king d6, queen here, here. So this variation goes like this. Okay, so we will see this variation, but right now for b4, okay, so queen into b4, bishop g5. And now what happens is that there is a brilliant move that which can be played here, is that queen into e1 and queen into, and then knight f6. So what happens in this position is that when you look back, okay, it is not that we have lost a rook, or rather I would say that we have gave the queen for a rook. Okay, so we need to remember that initially like white has sacrificed the rook. So right now there is a compensation for queen. Okay, so the compensation is, I mean, there are two rooks for a queen. So it is still, the game is on. Okay, so it is not over yet. So the interesting part is that, okay, so this game can go like this: queen e6 and queen rook to c2. So bishop c6, king here, queen here, king here. You take this one, and then what happens? It is not so clear. So it is still unclear. So this position would have, I mean, like this move could have been played. Okay, say by playing queen e1. Okay, so queen e1 should have been played, but in the actual game he went on with knight f6 and knight f6. So now what happens is that the thing with b4 is that it not only like deflects the queen from guarding c8. So right now it is guarding the rook on c8. Okay, but the moment you play b4, it is doing a couple of things. It is deflecting the queen from protecting the rook on c8, and also it is deflecting the queen from protecting the bishop coming to g5. So some multi-purpose move, right? So which is not so usual to see. Queen into b4, bishop here, and it went on with knight f6, queen into rook, because the queen has already left c5 and there is no protection, so the game is over. And so here, let's get back to this position. So bishop e7. So bishop e7 is what we saw, and now let's say queen c5 is something that which we saw, and instead of bishop e7, let's go with king b8. And in this position, bishop g5 straight away, and king to c7. So the thing is, the knight cannot go to f6 because the king is quite exposed, and the rook can go to d1, and it can start giving checks, and the king goes to c7, bishop goes to f4, and all of a sudden the bishops look like, I mean, like sharp edge knife, both the bishops on f4 and g2. So what happens is that king to c7, queen to c6 check, and king to b8, bishop to f4 check, rook to c7, bishop into c7, queen into, and then say queen to a checkmate. Okay, quite interesting, right? So the thing is, white is having all these options, and he has sacrificed, and he is literally crushing his opponent because of one single reason. He is having enough pieces, and I mean, like for the attack, and he is bringing the pieces right on time, and the king is still in the center. So that's it for today, and we shall connect again tomorrow, and that might be part 3 of how to attack in chess. If you like this video, you can like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you.